Kids attending the president's rallies makes a New York Times photographer despondent. In an op-ed, Damon Winter writes, "It had been a long journey covering the campaign, and I remember being exhausted by the anger I experienced. In those final weeks, I remember being heartbroken that children were exposed to this anger, were learning from it and participating in it." But kids that are going to the rallies are telling a different story.
Donald Trump, I've been supporting him since the 2016 election, and I just came to support and came out here.
He's building the wall which stops illegal immigration, which is great.
I want to see that he is best president of America.
All right, here to weigh in, our panel, RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany, and with the hat on this morning, Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. Guys, thanks so much for coming on. Kayleigh, I want to start with you. Reading the op-ed, it seemed a bit dramatic, I would say, the concerns that he had.
Yeah, it was rife with hyperbole and exaggeration, there's no doubt. And the New York Times, once again, exposes their elitism. And that's what this article was. It was a leftist elite deriding and decrying Trump rallies. He literally says in the piece that he has to take photographs to remind himself of the humanity of Trump voters. He then talks about the press being siphoned off into cages. That is so false. The press is always siphoned off at rallies, not in cages. And if he was so concerned about that, why not be concerned when Hillary roped them off, literally roped them off, and there's video of it. So complete exaggeration, complete elitism, and it was a ridiculous op-ed.
What'd you make, Chuck? What'd you make of that article?
Well, I think politics is an emotional sport. I also think Kelly's got a lot of big words that I don't understand. But what I do understand is this, that there's a lot of emotion in politics. If you want to take your kids to a rally, you have every right to do that. Isn't it the right thing to do at this particular time with this particular campaign? That's up to you as a parent. Let me take me, for example. I live with two 20-year-old grandbabies, and I'm very emotional. I've been even known to punch a dude when he makes the wrong decision at me. So what I do is I take my phone when somebody calls me about politics, and I step outside because the things I know I'm going to say, I don't want them twin babies hearing because I know they're going to repeat it.
Kayleigh, he makes a good point that this is not really a great time for kids to be introduced to politics. The political situation in this country is terrible right now. Maybe don't take them to the Trump rally. Maybe don't let them watch some of the things that they see on TV and some of the things that you read, because there's a lot of craziness on both sides of the aisle right now. I mean, the world is on fire every day if you watch some news stations.
Well, look, I wouldn't take them to a Maxine Waters rally where there's literally encouragement of violent protest against Trump officials, or at least that's how I perceived her statement. But, you know, the kids that you played at the beginning of this segment, I thought it was really interesting to hear, you know, a young person articulate, you know, pretty good arguments against illegal immigration. A lot of these kids walk away having learned something, having been engaged in civics and the political process in a way that maybe they hadn't before. I've been to Trump rallies. As President Trump says, there's a lot of love in the room. I don't agree with this characterization at all. I think it's a good time for kids to learn and be engaged because of this president.
Chuck, on your side, a lot of people say that the president promotes divisiveness and in some cases violence. But can't you also argue the exact same thing? The Democrats and the far left and some in the media have made it to the point where you can't even wear a Make America Great Again hat without being assaulted. I mean, that is crazy.
Again, I am the one who is doing that. I will tell you that I'm an emotional being, and I've said things I regret saying. I've been at that rally in the heat of the moment and said some pretty visceral things at the microphone. It's up to you as a parent whether you want to drag your baby to that visceralness or not. That's what's wrong with our politics overall, is all of this hatred amongst each other. People want to make this country everything that it can be, and we can do without talking down to each other.
Yeah. Kayleigh, you know, this op-ed writer, this photographer for the Times, doesn't want kids to go to a Trump rally and to be exposed to, I guess, conservative ideals. It is interesting, though, that in schools these days, you pretty much are only exposed to liberal ideas. So where are you supposed to get the other side if you're a kid?
That's exactly right. You know, this editor or this photographer is a liberal snowflake, and any exposure to conservative ideas, to Republican ideas, to him is vitriolic. You're exactly right. Our schools are rife with leftist ideology. There's no doubt about that. Academia, the media, in most cases. So you're right. You know, conservatism shouldn't be characterized as vitriolic, but nevertheless, that's how the New York Times sees it.
Well, Rob, I would go on to say that I grew up in East Texas, and there ain't no liberalness around my school in East Texas, in Tyler, Texas, where I come from. They won't even let you watch MSNBC over there. So I wouldn't say this rife with liberalism everywhere you go.
That's a fair statement. That is a fair statement. All right, guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning. Maybe let the kids just watch cartoons.
I like the cartoons.
Thanks, Rob.
All right.